But anyhow, I guess to follow the last thing you said there is climb say to 22 on the head to 160, and then he would start. Let's say there was another airplane up there and you were over here, and he was coming this way, and they'd turn you to intercept. They would figure his speed, and they'd figure where y'all were going to come together to give you an intercept heading, and then you simply fly the intercept headings or all the headings they give you, and change the altitude. If they told you to change the altitude, they start seeing the relative altitude. They could get you a little closer to altitude, and they tried to put you. You might say pull in behind, like pulling somebody behind on a freeway. They tried to pull you in behind the other airplane at about maximum about 5 miles behind and in line with it. And they sometimes they'll get a little closer than that. When we practiced up in New England, we'd sometimes pull in 2 miles behind to see if they could do it. But it was a little dangerous because if they didn't read the radar right, 2 miles ain't much. Mm-hmm. So usually about 5 miles behind. And on your radar screen, you had what's called a PIP, a little indication of a bright spot on the screen. The screen's pretty dark, and if you get, as soon as you get radar contact on your radar, it'd be just a little dot there. And on the screen itself, superimposed were etched, I guess, lines, 2 lines here, one on each side of that dot. The dot would come on center, but it would move sideways. If you were the airplane and I'm in my airplane, if I go this way, that dot moves right over there where you are. That's where that's you.
Oh, that dot is you, not the target.
No, it's you. I'm saying you as a target.
That's me as a target.
Yeah, when you're in the airplane, that dot is the target. And then these 2 lines are out here a certain distance on the screen, actually about that far apart. And the dot's in the middle, say when you get a good heading right at it. And then as you get closer, I cannot remember the numbers. I'm sure I knew those at the time. But as you get closer, this little dot would begin to spread wings. The radar scope is a little shaky line, Mm-hmm. And those little shaky lines would begin to form little points like that out both sides. And that little line would grow as you got closer. And when that line reached those 2 lines on the screen, there's black lines that's on the screen, then you're at 600 feet, just right for firing range.
When your wingspans touched the lines.
Mm-hmm. That was ideal.
And your guns were sighted for 600 feet.
They were converged at 600. That's right.
All right. So you were explaining how the radar worked. When the wingspan expanded to the size of the bars, mm-hmm. then you would fire.
No.
You wouldn't?
He knew you were in firing range.
Okay.
And if you could see it, you would fire.
Oh, you only fired if you could see it.
Might be one of yours with an IFF inoperative. You don't do that.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there were occasions, I seem to remember reading about some that were people got fouled up and fired on their own airplanes, but the rule was when you reached that range, you got ready to put your finger on the trigger, so to speak, but you started looking. We had, in the night fighter, we had some, I think I told you one time, we had some binoculars that were, mm-hmm. gosh, about that big, and they hung around your neck like a lead weight. They were really heavy. And you get those things up and try to steady them up and try to see in there. It was so dark. They had real big lenses on them, and mm-hmm. they were night binoculars by purpose, and pulled in a lot of light into that thing. And you could see better with those than you could with the eye, but you couldn't fly much and hold them up there with both hands, so you had to get in pretty good position and then start trying to see it with those. If it's dark, of course, if it's moonlight, no problem. You can see an airplane good and quite a ways off in the moonlight. But nobody, in terms of the enemy airplanes that were interdicting the fleet, would fly on the moonlight night. They didn't do it because they knew you'd be seen easily.
Mm-hmm. So now we're getting into the part that I'm almost embarrassed to ask you about, knowing how you feel about kind of the term war heroes, but we're talking about now of pulling the trigger. You have shot down 7 planes, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What what was that experience like? I know, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
I just don't have much to say about it.
Okay. But you would,
When you get in position, you see the airplane there, you just pull the trigger. That's all there is to it.
and you
You
would,
don't ever think about those things.
and you could tell if you hit or not by what was happening up there, huh?
Oh, if at night, if you hit an airplane, there's no problem. You can see flash, and you see a flash from every bullet that hits.
Uh-huh.
And you can see your own tracers too.
Right, every so many bullets was a tracer.
Yeah, I think at night the load was, every fifth bullet was a tracer.
Okay.
So
And
when they're probably seeing hits,
so you were flying wingman to what's the film? Malcolm.
Kegel.
So how would you get into position to shoot? Would you kind of get broken up into a melee or something, or?
Oh, things are very much broken up when you get into a bunch of airplanes. It's if you read all the combat stories, the common thread is just a confusion.
Mm-hmm.
You're just looking everywhere as quick as you can, and the instantaneous area is like the slideshow in the training thing, and just pop and there's an airplane and it's gone. And the most frequent comment you see is there's a minute ago there was airplanes right here and I was looking, trying to shoot at them, and a second later, I look around and there's no airplanes anywhere. There's a lot of space up there in the air, and the airplane's pretty small, so it's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
So you don't see a lot, and you don't comprehend a lot. It's amazing to me, some of these stories in these magazines, war magazines, forget how detailed they are, and frankly, I don't believe any of them.
Uh-huh.
Maybe one here and there might have a real memory, but the detail they report in there is imaginary, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They thought about it, and in their mind's eye, that's the way it looked like, but it wasn't the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's like history as a whole, you know. They say history is 50% inaccurate because the guy writing it is seeing what he sees in his head from what he's read about it. He's not seeing it really.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he never did see it, in fact, in person. If it was history, 100 years old, he didn't see it. So it's all in the brain. There's a lot of pictures in there, but how accurate they are and so forth is very questionable. At the moment, if you take two airplanes that go up in the air and dogfight together, you can remember that right after that exactly what they did, but you can't remember that sort of thing
Yeah.
very long. But at night, it was no problem. You just got that wings up there and got your binoculars, started looking, and finally saw them. It was an interesting thought that always occurred to me. Once you got your binoculars up and saw the airplane, you could take the binoculars down. You could see it then, because I guess you left a print in there or something. You could see what you thought you saw, but it seemed like it was there. But as I was talking about that, what I said was you had to identify that airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Be sure it was an enemy airplane before you shot it.
Did you know what kind of planes they were when you shot them down? Or?
Yeah. Both the airplanes that night I shot down was Betty's, a twin-engine bomber.
Mm-hmm.
That was about the only airplane they had that would get from land way out to sea.
So you
The
shot.
fleet was way out to sea at night, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't stay close to the shore.
Uh-huh.
I've always described the fleet dispositions as being aligned parallel to the main island of Japan, which is kind of southwest, northeast.
Right.
There was a line of ships out 250 miles from the nearest land, and it was stretched 1,000 miles each way. And beyond that 250 line, where all the supply ships, was another 250 miles, where all the tankers and the jeep carriers and that sort of thing was. So there was, you know, if Japan had good radar, they could see Japan and the line here and the line there all the time. And if they could have seen how many ships are on it, I think they'd all just dug a hole and gone in it right away, because there were sure an enormous number of ships out there.
So you shot two at night and then 5 during the daytime, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. When you do you remember anything about what the night landings were like? What was that kind of? What kind of yeah.
I remember sort of, very vaguely about it. I know exactly how it was done. They had what I call a disc lamp with an arc, bending arm like that, with a parallel to the deck shield, metal shield that was probably 3 feet long, or maybe longer. I don't know. They seemed pretty long at the time. I like having a neon bulb through there, and they had 4 of those for the carrier deck, 2 aft near the back of the deck of the landing deck, and 2 up fairly forward. And so what you had was a distance perspective for the distance between them, and of course the width that told you where the deck was. And they were a pale bluish light. It wasn't white.
But could you see?
May have been red. I seem to remember blue, but it may have been red. I don't know.
And the LSO, did he have on lights on his?
Fluorescent. His suit was sewed in strips with his, so you could see his legs and arms. And these strips, you could see very closely where his arms were. You know, that's the only good he could do if you see him. So yeah, they were fluorescent or whatever you call it.
And you were coming. The interesting thing has always been that they land on carriers out of a turn. You don't come straight in. You turn in. And
Bob Hoover describes that again in his talk about carrier. He got that little section on carrier. Said all the big engine airplanes you had to turn. He was comparing it to the F-86 and the P-51, and he said in those you could see pretty much near the nose, not right at it, not right over it, but you see near it. He said all the Navy airplanes were big nose, you couldn't see, you had to be in a turn or you didn't see the deck.
Oh.
So that was the idea in the turn. But it was probably the best thing in several angles. I've speculated on that many times. The 180 side approach I was talking about a little while ago is based on the fact that you're constantly adjusting, and you see a trend. In a straight flight you see where it's headed, but in a turn you see a trend. You see that line just as surely as if you're straight. You know, it took a little practice and judgment, I guess, to see where the end of it was. If you're coming in here, you had to see where the end was going to be, you know. But the big help in all that was that you flew a steady airspeed.
Yeah. And then and then he would wave and you'd cut your throttle, and then the tail hook would hopefully grab and.
Yep. Yeah, he signaled you a whole lot. The LSO would signal you high, what you are, not what he's the LSO here. This would be high, and this would be low. And always turn the paddles. The paddles are pretty big round, and you thinned on, you can hardly see them, but they're big fluorescent things there. So when you turn like this, boy, you better get on the power, because you're going to figure hit the fantail of the ship. So it would be high and low, and come on, be low on power, meaning you were slow.
That would mean add power.
Yeah, you were slow.
And then how his arms were aligned would be how your wings were aligned.
Yeah, that's why he just matches arms. If he wants you to go around this way, shallow the turn out a little bit, and bank you this way.
Oh, okay.
Bank you this way. He had fine control. It really wasn't a problem.
It was almost like a remote control airplane, huh?
Yeah, but he controlled it very well. And the only people that didn't do well at it were people that wouldn't mind. They would watch close and wouldn't mind. If you didn't watch close, he'd do this, you know, he'd give you one of these, and you missed that, he'd be over here too quick, see. So you had to keep your eye on him. And let's see, another signal was rudder, and it was always this rudder. Right rudder is what you were shy of because of torque. When you added power, he needed right rudder right then. If you didn't do it, he'd give you this foot out there like that. And again, like right on the board, he had to do all this backwards.
And you could see him out there.
Oh yeah, you could see the LSO good from the time you turned downwind right in here. And not at night you couldn't. I'm talking about daytime. You could see him out here, but you could see him from night from the halfway around the circle. You could see him good. That's the main thing you could see. It was pretty small. It was like a tiny figure up there, but you were pretty interested in it. He looked real hard. You know, you didn't miss anything if you could have it.
Then was the deceleration pretty strenuous?
Oh, well, I think I told you, didn't I, about the first time I did a field carrier, land on the field and caught one of the sandbags and jerked the chute right out from under me.
Yeah.
That's pretty hard, but once you've been doing it, you were I must say, immune to it. One of the things that constantly occurs to me these days is people riding in cars. The driver's got hold of the wheel, and he knows when a turn is going to happen because he turns the wheel, doesn't he? So the feeling of that turn does not occur to him. He's already anticipated, expecting it, and he doesn't recognize it, he doesn't notice it usually unless it's really tight or something. But passengers always leaning. I thought about this a lot watching Toby and Donna's other dog, Bun, who was well accustomed to riding the car, and you could see as soon as the G-force of this turn get on Bun, you'd see this leg, if it was turning this way, you'd see that leg stiffen up like his knuckle was here, the knee was there. You see that leg stiffen up if you're watching. He knew, he could sense in here this tiniest little G-force coming. He couldn't see the wheel turning. He didn't pay attention to that, I'm sure, but he could feel that G-force. He'd get braced and ready for that. And Toby's already picking. He's not too good at it, but he's good at it. He'll get now where he'll walk around without being holding on to something. But when he first got him, he had to have him in your lap or he was really in bad shape. He was nervous. He'd feel all that turn force. And I think to apply that to airplanes, you had to have a keen anticipation and desire to feel that feeling and develop it where you feel the tiniest impulse of that skidding feeling, or not to tell you how to use the rudders. I think everybody had to develop that pretty well.
That's called seat of the pants flying, isn't it?
That's what it's called, but it's a poor description, you might say, but it is in a sense. It's where the force, sliding force is there, but you get it all through your whole body and your arm and everything.
Let me pause this.